Welcome to Future Foodcast. I'm Pam Miller, your host. There is a lot of talk about protein, alternative proteins, but it is hard to know which ones taste best. We've got a lady with us today who's going to help us with that. Cotto is the director of the Nectar program. Welcome to the show, Caroline.
Thanks so much for having me, Pam. Excited to be here.
Yeah, we're excited to hear all about what you do there at Nectar. Could you explain a little bit about your initiative and structure?
Absolutely. So Nectar is an initiative within Food System Innovations, which is a philanthropy that's focusing on accelerating the protein transition away from animal agriculture. And specifically, Nectar is working on accelerating the protein transition with taste. Because as you mentioned, there's an abundance of alternative protein products on the market, but no objective evidence-based way to tell which products actually taste good or are mimicking animal-based products. And so what we're really focusing on is doing large-scale blind sensory testing to figure out which products are best and how to replicate that in the market.
Wow. Well, I, as a consumer, for one, thank you for the work that you're doing, because I know I'm paying attention to where I'm spending my money at the store and what products I'm buying. So it's nice to have an organization like Nectar doing those blind taste tests for me, because, I've tried taste testing things myself before, and you can go through a lot of bad ones before you find one that is good, if you don't get discouraged before you get that far. So I know that's a part of the reason you're doing what you're doing.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think both for consumers and then also for retail buyers and food service operators, we're trying to reduce that friction so that you don't have a bad experience, especially when you're often paying more for these products, and that we're really recommending the products that go to market that are going to be sure wins.
Yeah, I'm excited about that. Well, tell us how you operate. How is Nectar set up?
Yeah, like I said, so Nectar is under the FSI or Food System Innovations banner. So we're fully sponsored by Food System Innovations. And like I said, we are really focusing on this large scale sensory testing. So bringing thousands of omnivore consumers to food service establishments to try plant-based products in a blind way, and then finding ways to operationalize that data. So we like to think about it as sort of three main pillars. We have our learn pillar, which is where we conduct these sensory tests. We have our support pillar, where we take that data and help the brands actually improve their products. And then we have the celebrate pillar, where we're looking and saying which of these products are great products and how can we amplify their messaging and their promotion in the market.
Yeah. Do you have any trouble finding people to experience or go through the blind taste test, or people like really excited to investigate different alternatives?
Yeah, it's a great question. So we're fairly new as an organization. So we did one large scale study in 2023, and that was a central location test. So we actually recruited people in the Chicagoland area that knew they were coming to a testing facility to taste products. We're now doing some of our testing in the Bay Area in restaurants, as I mentioned. So people get a free meal and they get to experience all these different types of products. So we have like tens of categories of products they can try if they're into meatballs or if they're into sausages. So we really try to make it fun. It's a little bit gamified. You get to come in, you get to try usually about 4 products at once, and you don't know what any of the products are. So you get to give us your unfiltered opinion. And I think that really helps with recruitment.
Well, that's kind of fun. I would like to play that game when you come to my part of the United States. Well, then you also have the support where you're helping with the R&D. So share with us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so through our sensory testing, we're able to identify specific attributes of products that are either driving, positive liking or negative liking. So for example, something like a weird aftertaste or a mushy texture would be something that would decrease your liking score of that product. So we're able to share that specific data back with the specific brand and say, we believe that your product could be improved if you were able to make the texture a little firmer, or if you were able to sort of use some masking agent or something to offset this weird aftertaste. So giving really tailored feedback so that the R&D teams know where to focus their effort and, are not spending money across the board, but they can kind of do it in a focused way.
Well, that's a really great value to the companies that are participating in the taste test because you're giving them, actionable reviews back where on how to improve their product or why there was maybe a little bit of a negative score in a certain area so that they can then focus their R&D efforts on, improving that.
For sure, yeah. This type of sensory testing is often really expensive for brands and often out of reach for small startups. So by doing lots of testing at once, we're able to achieve some economy of scale and reduce that cost for the brands themselves. I think for some other brands that do a lot of internal sensory testing, they're more interested in this third-party stamp of approval that says, yes, this product tastes good, or there's work to do. But definitely we are trying to be quite altruistic here. Like we have no end game besides we want to see great tasting products in the market.
Which is a great end game. And I particularly like that you celebrate afterwards when you find products that are great tasting and go past the taste test, and you're actually sharing that information.
Yeah, and like I said, since we're quite new, we haven't launched the formal Nectar Awards yet, but that is our intention this spring. So the goal is to set sort of a threshold bar for performance, and any brand that performs above that bar will be eligible for a top category performance credential that we're going to create that says, this is Nectar approved. And then in each category, we're going to name the top performing brand of the category, and that will also receive a Great Taste Award.
Oh, that's exciting. Well, for a timestamp, for those of you who might be listening or watching us on YouTube at all different times, this show is airing in the fall of 2024. So that means those first awards will be in the spring of 2025. So look out for that, or look for them in the past, depending on when you see this episode. So thanks for sharing that with us, Caroline. That sounds like a really great goal and a worthy category of items, to give awards and people know what products that taste good. That's what we're all looking for.
Yeah, I think we hear a lot from folks that it's hard to trust a brand if they just say, our product tastes really good. We've done sensory testing. There's not a lot of way to test that that's objective versus subjective, according to the company. So that's another value that we're bringing is we are, a third party, objective third party that can provide that to brands. And I would just say, just a plug in, we are recruiting for brands right now. So if brands have plant-based products that they're interested in getting tested, specifically meat analogs right now, we would definitely love to get in touch with them and include them in the research before those awards go live in spring of 2025.
That's exciting. Okay, call out. And we've got several of our guests on future Foodcasts for you to check out, Caroline, as well, because the protein transition is a consumer focus right now and an industry focus. So we've been highlighting some of those companies. So hopefully you can have some pairing up going on there. But you're doing some other reporting as well from your studies.
Yeah, so we released our first Taste of the Industry report in June of 2024. That was looking at 5 categories of alternative meat products. And we found that in that study, the vegan nuggets actually outperformed chicken nuggets on taste, which was quite an exciting finding. I think on the whole, consumers are demanding bolder flavor profiles from plant-based products. So they want something juicier, spicier, firmer, meatier, across the board. So we're encouraging brands to really lean into that. And then we also found that the average plant-based product still has a ways to go before achieving mainstream adoption. So that's really where we're trying to support brands on that. We're going to be releasing our next report in September here. So for those watching now, excited to hear that coming to market. But that one is going to be on what we're calling plant-rich meats or blended products. So those are products that are some portion animal-based and some portion plant-based. And across 9 categories, we were testing sort of how is the consumer perception of those products. And early results are showing that in 2 of the 9 categories, the plant-rich meats actually outperformed both the plant-based and the animal-based meats. But in most categories, we're seeing there's promise for plant-rich meats, but it's not there quite yet.
Okay, good to know. I think the report is probably worthy of a good read. So by the time this show is released, that will be out there, and we'll have a link in the show notes for our listeners or those of us watching on YouTube. So you can definitely find that and any future reports, I'm sure, on your website. So that's really exciting. Well, as we think about protein transition, there's all kinds of terms being thrown around, and I know probably you're exposed to a lot of them, and maybe you could share how you're approaching the terminology that's used around this space.
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, I think consumers are really sensitive to terminology, right? Like you want to make things sound delicious and also understandable. And so, for plant-based, that's pretty straightforward. I think for things like cultivated meat, there's a lot more education that's required. And then for these emerging categories that we're studying, for example, plant-rich meats, we started with the term blended, and that's kind of what the industry at large was using. But when we asked consumers, do you understand what blended products are, they either said, no, did you put it in a blender or what? And something like hybrid is, not very appealing from a taste perspective. And so we did a lot of surveying in the go-to-market section of our sensory test to understand what terminology really makes sense for this emerging category within alternative proteins. So we looked at things like plant enhanced or, plant plus or all these different terms, and really landed on plant rich being something that is understandable. So it's plant rich meat. You understand that it's a product that includes both of those items, but that does have that universal taste appeal. Now, the issue is really how do you socialize that term so that people kind of see it in the store on packaging and really understand what that means.
Right. I think clarity of messaging is difficult when you're introducing a new category somewhat. I mean, some people are familiar, some people are not as familiar, but how do you get people to be open-minded enough to take a look at it, right? So what is that catchy phrase on the package or that clear phrase on the package that lets them know what they might be looking at?
For sure. Yeah. I spent the last 6 years working in upcycled food, which is a term for food that, would have otherwise gone to waste that you're elevating to a higher value. But it took a really long time to kind of agree on what was the correct terminology and then socialize it and get consumers excited about purchasing upcycled food. Like when I purchase upcycled food, I know that I'm helping fight food waste, which is a big driver of climate change. And so I'm able to contribute that way. I think a very similar methodology is going to be needed here with plant-rich meats to say, like, this is something that's, better for me, better for the environment, and I can trust that it tastes good. And so I will seek it out in the store rather than having to question what it is.
Right. Well, I, for one, as a consumer, would feel a lot more confident if I read Nectar's report first and then knew what I wanted to go buy at the store. So that gives me, a lot of times, because as we spoke before, I mean, people give up. You get discouraged when I remember early in protein bars, for example, now they're all over. They taste fabulous and there's all kinds of different brands. But early on, they really just tasted a lot of them like cardboard. It was
Definitely.
not a perfected thing.
For sure. Yeah. And I think, like I said, especially when these products are at a price premium, you don't want to be spending your hard-earned dollars to buy something that you or your family is not going to eat. So I think it really is important to make sure that when people buy plant-based products, they're having a good experience, they're really craveable, and they're going to come back for more.
Yeah. And that taste is king, as they say in the food industry, because if it doesn't taste good, not just the kids aren't going to eat it, the adults aren't going to eat it either. So that's the important piece of dressing.
Totally. And then we will have more food waste on the back end, which we want to avoid as well.
Which we don't need. So what is the longer term objective here of Nectar? I mean, what are you looking to eventually do by sharing, doing the research, first of all, and helping some of these brands that are trying to establish themselves to get a following and find a fan base or a consumer base that's going to buy their product. And then you're helping them by sharing your research findings so that they can focus on the areas that need to be improved in their foods, celebrating the great ones that you find and doing reports on that. Like, what's the long-term goal?
Yeah, there are a few missions. I think we all know we need to reduce our reliance on animal agriculture. It's really bad for the climate. There's a lot of human health and public health issues that come from it, plus, animal suffering. So our long-term goal is that we're able to use plant-rich meats as a gateway to full plant-based meat adoption, and that people are, really excited about seeing these products on menus because they can know that these products are going to taste good and that they're nutritious and they'll be good to feed to their families. So we're starting with plant-based meats, but we're going to be moving into additional categories like plant-based cheese, plant-based eggs, those sorts of things. We also plan to do testing in different markets. So the products that are in the Asian Pacific market, for instance, are quite different from the products developed for the North American market. So we want to make sure that we're taking a global approach when we think about taste and making sure that is applicable to regional flavors and taste palettes as well. And then also we're creating all of these novel data sets that can potentially be used for things like AI and large language models to create predictive modeling for what tastes great. So if we figure out through all of this, a certain set of ingredients or a certain type of production is developing products that taste great, we can kind of use that to develop new products with some of these emerging technologies. So we're currently working with some researchers at universities and open to chatting with anybody who's interested on how we can use this data to really figure out without having to do a ton of benchtop testing what products will taste great.
Great. Worthy. I think, Caroline, I hear collaboration too. If you can have these data sets out there and share the information, then we can have, the food industry is really well known for being very siloed with people doing research in all different, maybe the same areas, but all separately. So if some of this information can be shared, then as a collective, we can, move forward together and make some great choices.
I totally agree. I couldn't have said it better myself. Collaboration, I think, is really key, especially we're running out of time with the food system and climate. And so being able to work together to sort of accelerate these transitions is going to be more and more important as time goes on. And I'll just say also, Food System Innovations runs a number of different initiatives. One of them that they just released is an RFP for people working on AI and predictive modeling and collaborative data sets. So if that's you, definitely reach out and get in touch.
Great. And again, the links will be in the show notes. Caroline, thank you so much for sharing all this information with our audience. I know they appreciate it. And I appreciate your time and your expertise in sharing it with our audience.
Thanks so much, Pam. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. And if you don't want to miss episodes like this, please subscribe so you can get our next one. Until next time, I'm Pam Line-Miller.
Thanks for listening to Future Foodcast. Future Foodcast is powered by Farm to Plate, the leading food blockchain platform. Subscribe on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts to stay up to date with the very latest innovations in the food industry.